Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and welcome back to another review, and this time from the Waxwork set. I'm reviewing, to me, the very underrated Waxwork II Lost in Time. Reason I say underrated, I know it gets a lot of bad crap on Blu-ray forums when this came out. People are like, oh, does it have to have Waxwork 2? Can't it just be the first one? Who cares about the second one? Don't And like a bunch of people saying, well, the only way that would get out and released is if it was bundled with the first one like this. No one would ever buy the second one if it was released, so they had to bundle it with the first one, and it just so much crap. The Blu-ray reviews, they'll give their props to the first one, but the second one gets the shaft. And I love the second. I love both movies. I think both of them are great, low budget horror films, comedies, melding of the two. I think it shows what you can do with a low budget. I think it shows ambitiousness and ingenuity is not limited to a budget because from what I understand, the first Waxwork cost around 3 million, maybe less. And on the commentary, they mentioned how this cost a quarter of that. So I don't know if it was, they didn't say specifically what it was, but I'm like, a quarter of the original? Does that mean this costs less than $1 million? Was that what it is? And it's weird on Wikipedia. It says the first one cost 1.5 million, but yet on the commentary, someone mentioned 3 million or so. I don't know what it is. Either way, they didn't have. They had even less money for this sequel, and they had less time. I think they had a month at most to make the film. And I love it. I watched both of these films a lot when I was a kid, but to be honest, between the two, I watched this even more. And I love the first one. I reviewed the first one. I love the odes to the old werewolf, mummy, vampire, and they do such a great gory rendition of those characters. Of the barroom brawl type of fight at the end. I like Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman. I like the concept. I like it more than Cabin in the Woods. But of the two, this was always the one I liked even more. And that's not to do a disservice to the first one. It's just when I watch both of them, I lean more towards this one because it had the horror and comedy, but it had an adventure aspect to it. And I know this is like the 10th time repeating, but before you get the idea, I still do love the first movie. I really do love the first one. If I can fucking hold it right. But at least it gets the pass and it deserves it. This deserves some defending. Because what I'll give you is when it gets to the medieval time, it lags. It goes a little bit slow, and I think there's about 10 minutes you could have cut out of it. That's my one problem with the film. Just the other stuff, I can forgive a film that has a tiny budget if it's entertaining, if it shows me that these people worked their ass off, if they gave a shit. I see that clearly in this movie because Zach Galligan and I think Deborah Foreman was the girlfriend of the director Anthony Hickox on the first one, and then they broke up. So that's probably why she didn't come back for this one. So they got a model, Monica Schneider, which I thought did fine for what she had to do. After the first one, she goes home. The hand that you see at the end of the first movie, they gave a little bit of sequel bait, follows her home, kills her father, played by George Buck Flower, who's worked with John Carpenter a lot. He was in They Live. He was in Escape from New York. I believe he's the guy in Escape from New York who Snape Plissken finds. It's like, yeah, I'm the president. I knew if I have this, I'll be president. Hail to the chief, la da da da. He was killed by one. He was on a boat and killed by one of the ghosts in John Carpenter's The Fog. He was a guy talking with Roddy Piper and Keith David on They Live when they're on this sort of ship. And he's like, they're winning, and this is the, this is the right side to be, and they run the show. I think that was the line. They run the whole show. So it was cool to see him. He's a fun character actor. He gets killed. She puts the hand down the garbage disposal. All this blood flows over here. The blood flows. And she's tried for murder. Of course, they don't believe her. And they go to Patrick Bettany, who left a message saying if anything happens, go into this room I have, sort of an attic type of area where I have all these trinkets from stuff I've done before. And you see stuff like a bloody hockey mask and a stage from Van Helsing. And they find this little compass which opens a portal to time. And they go in trying to find evidence so that she doesn't get the electric chair, and thus they get lost in time. A killer is waiting in the past, present, and future. That means everywhere they go, there's always some monster, some creatures, or some villain. As someone says, they stumbled onto God's Nintendo game. I thought that was a really cool line. I like that line. God's Nintendo game. And I love that idea. That's what I like. It becomes an adventure of horror and comedy. It's an adventure aspect, and then by the end, sort of a fairy tale aspect, where Zach Galligan becomes a time warrior, and he's found his purpose to battle through time. And on the commentary, Anthony Hickox mentions there was talks of a Waxwork III. He didn't go into details what it would be about, but I would love to have seen a Waxwork III. It's too bad that didn't happen. I think Hickox mentions how there's one person who released the first film, there's another person who released the second film, and then those two people would not work things out, so they couldn't make a third one. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what Hickox says in the commentary, which is another good commentary with Andy Hickox and Zach Galligan. And I really appreciate the ambitiousness that they did with a low budget. When they're lost in time, it makes me think of that scene in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey when they're falling through darkness. Zach Galligan and Monica Schneider, and she gets taken away. And this weird scene that I didn't understand for the longest time, and then Anthony Hickox explained it on the commentary. When he did, I'm like, that's actually pretty cool. Zach Galligan is falling. And, oh, by the way, the picture quality when they're in the attic before they go through the portal of time, that's one of those instances when I was reviewing the Blu-ray, I said that the color seems a bit dim and muted. You can definitely tell in that scene when, again, before they get the compass and open up the portal and go through, you can tell that the color seems a bit muted and dim. So that's the one thing I wish they could have done better on this. Sorry about that. Clearing my throat. But yeah, as he's falling, it was weird because you've seen like old film footage of this woman, and oh, okay, it's his mom. And then like he runs towards her, and she's like, "Come to mommy." And then it cuts to like a baby inside of a womb, and Hitchcock is explaining, well, this is him being reborn into a time warrior. So it's like the kid running back into his mom's womb. And we cut to a womb. It's not as graphic as I make it sound like. As weird as it sounds, it's done tastefully and interesting. And then you see like a silhouette of a figure as there's the quantum leap thing. That's what it reminds me of, the quantum leap thing with the splash of blue. It just reminds me of Quantum Leap. But in a way, it's, well, kind of a horror comedy version of Quantum Leap. Except he's not, well, I guess he is sort of, he's going to something and people think they are someone else. So he's not actually in a body, but at the same time, when he's there, people call them different names. So it is sort of a horror comedy version of Quantum Leap. I never thought of it that way, but it's like, man, that makes me think you could have done a TV show where each time, each episode, they go to another world or 2 or 3 worlds, and you do odes to tons of stuff. Maybe that could work, like an HBO or Cinemax or TV show with Zach Galligan. and Monteshare. But sorry, after this, but I'm just anyway. And you have the segments, the where you have a Frankenstein monster, and you have the guy who plays Frankenstein, Martin Kemp. He does a good job. Makes him feed the Frankenstein monster, and Zach Galligan. I think he does. I would say he even does a better job here than the first one. I liked him in the first one, but in the first one he had to pray. He had to play sort of a more of a pompous, uptight, rich kid, spoiled kid. Here, he didn't have to worry to do that. It's just sort of a guy wanting to help his girlfriend out. So I think his performance. I know one thing he made fun of in the first commentary. He talked about how he looked like he was overweight, and how reviews for Gremlins 2, which was around before this, mentioned how he looks like he ate the Gremlins or something like that, so he lost some weight for this role. I thought he looked fine in Gremlins 2 and such, but you know, I've done that to people I don't like, and movie wise, Rob Zombie or Michael Bay, Megan Fox. So, but Zach Galligan, he's always a guy I've wish I could have seen him in more stuff. I love him in Gremlins 1 and 2. That's kind of one of the disappointments of Gremlins 2, even though I really enjoyed Gremlins 2. If you watch that again, Zach Galligan is barely in it. I mean, he's able to get some good come up as on them at the end. But if you watch that film again, just realize how little screen time. I think he even mentions that in the commentary of the Gremlins 2. So that was too bad, but I still really enjoy the film. But I like him in these movies. I think he's in the Warlock sequel that Anthony Hickox directed, and I think he's actually one of the people who gets killed in that bar in Hellraiser 3. Like, you blink and you miss it. Because he became friends with Anthony Hickox and did a lot of stuff with him, even if it was small roles. But anyway, he's supposed to be feeding the Frankenstein monster. And it's like, what the hell am I going to feed him at this hour? He's like, hey, why don't we sit down for a pizza? And he listens to the slop, which is all these worms. Like, I can't feed you that. And he gives him some good food, which probably helps him out later. And he finds Frankenstein's book. He's like, oh, well, I could use this to bring back the dead and, use that for evidence to help his girlfriend out. Tries to get his girlfriend, who is being affected by the time they're in. And Martin Kemp is Frankenstein. I thought he was pretty good. He's going, what? You don't be with him? And then Zach Galligan was, no, just a second here. And she's still trying to be effective. But he's like, hey, Sarah, which is Monty Schnair's character, don't let us down. And pretty much the villagers come in, they give Frankenstein and his monster, and they all go to the basement where the monster's at. And he sees his name's not Igor, it's Felix, I think. And he thinks in the first film, you don't believe they can't hurt you. He thinks it's going to work again, so he's telling the guy, hit me. And even the monster going, huh? Yeah, hit me. Zach gets hit and he's almost knocked out. And instead, it's the creatures strangle him, and he tells his girlfriend, no, forget that. Don't listen to a word I say. Just run like hell. Forget what I said. Don't listen to a word I said. Just run like hell. And she's able to get away into another time portal. He needs to get the evidence. He gets some fun gore, like the Frankenstein monster leaves Zach Galligan alone and goes after his creator. Pops his eyeballs out. Pops his brain out. His brain fucking flies off. Zach catches it. Ew. Punches a hole through Felix, the assistant. Punches a hole right through the back and out the front. And then now Zach and his girlfriend are in two different things. Monty Schnair, she's in a segment based on Alien, which I think Anthony Hickox wanted to do in the first one. And I remember as a kid loving this, and I still do love it. I think Anthony Hickox, he's a little bit disappointed with the fact that he knew they didn't have the budget to do a segment like Alien. So, like, the the models outside are not the best. But I mean, for the tiny budget they have, I thought it was worth a shot, and it's looks better than the shit I see on Sci-Fi Channel. And he says good things about the creature, which he should, because that creature looks pretty damn good. In fact, you could use that creature for an actual alien ripoff. I don't know how to describe it, but if you watch the film, and you can see it more clearly in this, which is cool. I will say, even though the color seems a bit dim, it is sharper. I will say it is sharper picture quality, which I appreciate. Which maybe that wasn't too hard because the last DVD is an artisan. They might as well have been from a fucking VHS that was on the same DVD as the first one, so you're not going to have much picture quality for that. But while she's doing that, and there's a guy named Maxwell Caulfield who I believe was the lead in Grease 2, and he's sort of being the Bill Paxton character, and I liked him in that. And in their segment, uh, one guy, the monster like hits the guy in the balls and like grabs him and stretches his head and then slams it down in a big spurt of blood. You still have some fun gore gags in this. Maxwell Caulfield gets caught and the monster like taps him on the shoulder and he turns around and it takes his little helmet thing and he implodes and you have gushing blood out of the helmet. I love that the blood, the gore bits and the monster. I'm fine if you're outside model of the ship and you don't really see stars. I'm fine with that. I can forgive a low budget for its faults because they are trying. And that's what I want. I want you to try. And you're entertaining me, so I accept it. And while that's happening, Zach Galligan is in a segment based on The Haunting, which is all in black and white. You have Marina Sirtis. I believe she was Troy in Star Trek The Next Generation. And that's a show I didn't honestly watch too much. I've seen a few of the movies, but I didn't watch the show much. Then you also have Bruce Campbell, who actually plays a character that's not Bruce playing Bruce. I know that's what people expected from him nowadays, but I liked it when Bruce was not just playing Bruce. He was actually the first Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. It wasn't just Bruce being Bruce. It was Bruce being a character. Same with this movie. He was also doing films like Moontrap. I mean, the hell, what do I say? Now it's all They Call Me Bruce, or whatever the fuck they name was it? No, They Call Me Bruce. Isn't that the other one I like? No, They Call Me Bruce was the movie from back then. What the hell was that called? I can't remember now. Can't believe I'm on this tangent. Yeah, They Call Me Bruce was, yeah, from '82. I like that one. Where the guy thinks he's Bruce Lee, and I like that one. What's the one with Bruce Campbell? What the hell? My Name is Bruce. That's what it is. I didn't like that movie. That's what I fucking. Because it's just Bruce being an asshole, and that's all it was. And I'm like, to me, I think there's more to Bruce as an actor back in the day. It wasn't just I'm an asshole to the power of 11. But that's a different story. Here, he was playing a character, and a likable little professor type of character. And yes, some nice directing and camera angles, and Zach Galligan hearing noise, and sort of one of those scenes you see in a trick mirror where the image flattens and stretches. I like that kind of stuff. A little girl, which is the only thing in color, saying there's a underneath the diamond, and had a little bit of a story going with it. And there's like faces coming out of the walls. There's blood coming through the hallway, a la The Shining. Marina Sirtis is hanged, and she stops and points the way. And that's where they find Bruce Campbell with his rib cage out. And this was always one of those scenes that I laughed so much when I was a kid, still do to this day. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie, where the bird's pecking it, and Bruce playing this proper gentleman. You've always been a good sort. And Zach finds his rope, but accidentally drops Bruce right on his face. And just the look of him and this other woman, they look, is they gotta pull him back up. He's like, oh, accidents do happen, you know? And like there's a spot of blood on the ground, and Zach Galligan's like, oh, this won't get infected. He's picking all this stuff out, and every time he picks out this cartoonish sound effect, which made me laugh. And he's able to find the body of this girl and her bones. He's supposed to read this Bible passage to set her soul free, but someone's coming to kill them. Well, at that time, I think she grabbed the book, was going to burn it, and she just keeps throwing all this sorts of shit, hitting Bruce Campbell in the head. It's like a bag of rope, a hammer, a knife goes by him, books, a fucking bag of salt that hits him on the rib cage. Like, ooh, help, help, help. Zach gets a bottle and throws it as vinegar. Ooh, ooh. It's okay. It's actually helping. It's okay. You gotta read. And Zad starts reading, and he's like, "Hey, the book is upside down. You're reading it upside down." And Zad's like, "Oh, whoa, whoa!" And he reads it. He's able to set the soul free. And he asks Bruce Campbell, "You gonna be fine?" And Bruce goes, "Oh yeah, it's only a flesh wound," which must be an ode to Monty Python. It's only a flesh wound. And you cut to his girlfriend, and her and another guy have gotten out, and they do sort of the chest burster. Only this comes out of the guy's mouth, and gets on her, and the thing like has eyes. So it's like a crab spider thing that gets on her eyes, and the tube goes in her mouth, and Zach's able to hit it with an axe, and she like spits the stuff out that would have fucked her day up. And Zach has to deal with. You get the idea that he's been trying to get her. He's been going all through these scenes like with natives, and like there's a sword on this thing he carried and arrows. And she's like, "What about the Frankenstein book? Don't you have it?" He's like, "Well, the Loch Ness monster kind of ate it." Which I will. Which if they didn't, they didn't have the budget for that, but I would love to have seen that. And he deals with one of the creatures, and he's able to blow it up, fuck it up with a grenade. And there's another one coming and self-destruct, and they can't get the compass, but they go through a time portal, but they don't know what to do now because the compass was before. And this whole time it's been going like, okay, here's this hand that's a little old Evil Dead 2, and then killing George Buttflower, and then putting in the garbage disposal all this blood, then the trial, then Patrick Macnee, which was nice to see him again because he did a good job in the first movie. Then you have the Frankenstein segment, you have an alien segment, you have the haunting segment. A lot of fun stuff. And then it gets to the medieval part, which I think when anyone watches this, that's the part that they like the least. And I know in the commentary, I think even Zach Galligan asks, "Is there anything you would like to change, shorten it, or lengthen it, or something?" And I know Hickox likes the medieval stuff because he always wanted to do a medieval movie. Then later on, he did that film Prince Valiant, but he always wanted to do medieval. And since he could do anything he wanted with this, he wanted to do a medieval. And he actually put himself as one of the good guys who are with the king. So that's Anthony Hickox with like the long, sort of reddish hair. But anyway, before that, the girl gets taken. He gets left behind. He meets David Carradine, who tells him, "Hey, there's a big asshole sorcerer there. Here's your sword. Go kick his ass." And he disappears. Cool to see David Carradine in there. And this section, it does lag a little bit. It does slow things down. Like I said, I think you cut about 10 minutes out of it because, like, there's a scene where there's this dinner sequence where the king is being drugged because Alexander Godunov, who was in Die Hard, who has a great fight scene in the third act with Bruce Willis, and then at the end, about ready to shoot, and Reginald VelJohnson shoots him to death, which they say nothing but nice things about, because I believe he was like one of the great ballet dancers at the time. He was like a nice guy. But the whole segment of, the team drinking, he's, losing it and passing out, is like, that could have been really very much shortened. It was interesting when this black magic ritual Zadyalkin sees turns this girl into this like cat-like creature. And then Zadyalkin gets caught and he's seen, bottles of beer on the wall. And then Patrick Benny comes in, who's now this raven, voices his raven, and tells him that David Carradine, that was Zat's grandfather, and that's where you get the line that you stumble into God's Nintendo game. And when Zadyalkin gets out, he lets the people out, let's go kick some butt. That always bothered me. That's a nitpick, but why doesn't it just say, let's go kick some ass? It would sound better than butt, because butt sounds like something that would be censored for a TV version. Like, it's an R-rated movie. Let Zach Galligan say, let's go kick some ass. Like Steve James style. So that's a nitpick, but that's a little thing that did bug me. By that point, it picks up. Zach Galligan is able to save the teen from being killed. You get a little bit of sword fighting. The girlfriend doesn't want Alexander Godunov, and I thought Godunov did a good job. He's like, does this mean you don't love me? And she's like, no, and calls him names. I have a different light on the situation now. You killed the bitch. And Zad yelling gets the sword. He's like, you ain't seen nothing yet. Which is true, because at the end of the first movie, Anthony Hickox wanted to do a sword fight through all the Waxwork zones. He wasn't able to do that, but he was able to do it here. And again, it's the medieval part slowed the movie down. I don't hate the entire part. I think the second half of it is fine, when he's saving the prisoners and saves the king, getting little sword fights, fights this one guy, slams this big ass book on his face and stuff. That's fine. It's just from David Carradine to there, that section, you could cut about 10 minutes out of it, sniff some things, to move at a faster pace. Because then when you get the second half, it's fun, and then you get the sword fight. It's one of my favorite sword fights in movies. Not for the choreography. Choreography is there, but for the idea. Because the sword fight, it goes through Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who's looking at these two guys fighting, and he's like, huh? What the hell am I drinking? They go to a Dawn of the Dead mall. This is before I even saw Dawn of the Dead. So I remember the first time watching this movie, I'm like, what the hell is that? I kind of knew they were referencing other stuff. I'm like, what's this movie? Like zombies in a mall? And what's this? Man, I wish they made a movie like that. But then years later, I found out Dawn of the Dead. So really, that was my first time knowing Dawn of the Dead from this movie, really. And that was a fun scene. And Zach cuts a zombie's head off. And who are they? Whatever they are, they're bad. They're real bad. Zach Galligan fucks up Jack the Ripper and saves a girl and kicks him into a Nosferatu black and white segment. That's another thing I like about it. Zach Galligan has more to do as a character, because in the first one, it's more about finding out what's going on. Then we see what happened to one friend with the werewolf, what happened to another friend with the vampire, what happened to a cop with the mummy, and Zach and Deborah Foreman looking at information, finding out information. And then at the end, Zach runs away from the zombies, saves Deborah Foreman, and then is part of that barroom brawl. Here, throughout the film, he's doing stuff. He's dealing with the Frankenstein monster. He kills an alien creature. He saves a girl's soul by reading a book. Him being this sort of time warrior. It was cool to see Zach Galligan in that kind of role. It's cool for a sequel to have that character go through that. I think that's really cool. I'm looking for my drink. I set it aside somewhere. Oh well. I don't want to spend too much time looking. Figure out where to put it. Okay. Oh, well, I'll have it later. But that's what I do. In the sword fight, I mean, he's killing the zombies and fucking up Jack the Ripper. And that's what happened to Jack the Ripper. Zach Galligan kicked him, and then they're in a black and white little segment of Nosferatu. And there's an appearance of Drew Barrymore. Fucking Drew Barrymore is one of the two women in the bed. And Nosferatu fucks up Jack the Ripper. Think about that. I mean, people say Cabin in the Woods is a game changer. No, to me, films like this is a game changer. I have never before since seen a fucking sword fight that goes from Jekyll and Hyde's lab to fuck up Jack the Ripper but make him be killed by Nosferatu, a Dawn of the Dead zombie mall, and Godzilla. And you see Zach go down and go look at their version of Godzilla. I mean, they can't make it exactly, otherwise they get sued. Although they have the roar of Godzilla. And Zach goes, "Oh no," with the obviously purposely bad dubbing, which did make me laugh. I've never seen a sword fight like that. I think that's pretty damn cool. And able to get Kit Alexander back in the medieval time. They're able to kit Alexander Grunov into that cat creature that was formed before, and you tell like rips Grunov in half, kind of like the guy who got ripped in the werewolf. Like you see it more in the background this time. While the werewolf segment in the first movie, you see it really rip someone in half. Here you see a little bit of it, blood gush on the camera. And pretty much, hey, let's get out of here. Something else happens. Only one of them can go. He's like, I'll stay. You go. Hey, I love you. She's back in present time. Zach's giving her the hand that he cut off from the Dawn of the Dead zombie mall. And that's the evidence. She's innocent. And then kind of like Back to the Future Part 2, where Marty gets the thing, it's from the dock. A guy comes up to her and say, "Oh, we've been, with the mail service forever. We even started in Europe. Here you go." And she gets it, and it's Zach Galligan saying, "Join me," with the compass, and she's able to come back and she's going to join Mark, and they're going to fight time for God, or however you want to call it, and be part of God's Nintendo game. And it's sort of like a fairy tale ending, and no, what do you call it? No downbeat, depressing ending. And then you have a fun music video, like a rap song. Doom do 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 do, bum 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 doom do 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 do, doom 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 doom. No matter where you go, there you are. Lost in time like a bug in a jar, no matter where you go, there you are. Lost in time like a bug in a jar, no matter where you go, there you are. Do 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 do. And I thought that was a lot of fun ever since I was a kid. I still enjoy it to this day. I love this movie. I think my only problem is the medieval segment could have been shortened by 5-10 minutes. But with the tiny budget they had, they were ambitious and they tried to reach for the fences. They tried to reach for the top. They tried to go over the fence, go over the mountain, go over the fucking river. They tried to go far with the little budget. But also practically. Like Sci-Fi Channel, you just say does that, but they do it with, here's $5 CGI effects. Just have 50 creatures, or let's have 3 gigantic mega Sharkosauruses kill people. Here, it's let's go for broke, but at least on a practical level. That impresses me a lot more. Because I think some of the effects still look pretty, either the charming or like the alien creature I thought was pretty damn good, and the Frankenstein monster, the makeup looked pretty good, and some fun gore, brains being popped out and eyeballs being popped out and heads being stretched and smashed, and I'm like, man, they had that budget and they only had a month. This is a lot of work they did for this flick. Bruce Campbell was fun. Nice to see David Carradine in a cameo. Patrick Macnee, nice to see him come back. I like the adventure aspect. I thought the score was well done, like the first one. It's a different guy who did the score. This one was done by Stephen Schiff, who I believe has an audio interview and then isolated score on one of the commentaries to the film. The other commentary with Zach Galti and Anthony Hickox. You have the trailer, still gallery, and you just see the music video by itself without credits rolling by. And the making of the film is on disc 1 with the first one. But yeah, I know it's a long review, but it's long because I want to do some defending for the film. I don't think this, to me, is why I got into why I got into horror films, or films like Waxwork II, Lost in Time. This is why I got into these kind of movies. It's like, wow, there's tons of stuff happening, different creatures and monsters and humor, but horror, it's fun. I like Zach Galligan. Bruce Campbell is Seven was really that part of it was really funny. The sword fight was really cool. I'm like, Kevin the Woods can have, they have an ending with a giant CGI bat, a giant CGI snake from Sci-Fi Channel, CGI robot, and okay, a ripoff of Hellraiser, and cool, a unicorn that stabs people. Okay, I'd rather see a sword fight that goes from Dawn of the Dead to Jekyll and Hyde to fucking Godzilla to, and that's with a tiny budget. Imagine if they had a much bigger budget, what you could have done with a sword fight like that. But anyway, I've told long enough about this film. Love Waxwork II, Lost in Time. I think it doesn't deserve the hate. It's not that bad of a film at all, but that's just my thoughts on it. So either way, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you later. Bye bye.